Well, we want to thank you all for being here. We took what really was a heartbreaking tour of the disaster area here. Helene did real damage across 6 states. Of course, over the last week or so, I've been in Georgia to see some of the devastation there. I went to Florida on the coast where the hurricane made landfall and devastated communities there. But I think some of the worst devastation is probably right here in North Carolina, and that may be surprising to people. We don't think of North Carolina and the mountains here in terms of hurricanes and floods normally, but this probably has been what they refer to as a 1,000-year event. It's devastating, and it's heartbreaking to see the families, the small business owners, just the communities that are quite literally digging out from debris and all of the terrible things that have been left behind to the floods. We went to Swannanoa, to Biltmore Village, and we've seen some of the most disaster I've seen in my life, and that's saying a lot. I'm from the state of Louisiana, where we know hurricanes and we know disasters of this magnitude. Katrina was almost 20 years ago. We're still recovering in some ways from that in South Louisiana. So we know these situations well, but it's really hard to see. What is encouraging is the spirit of the people. And we were at the First Baptist Church in Swannanoa there, and it's become sort of a hub of a community activity where people and organizations and volunteers from all over the nation have come in to lend supplies and support and diapers and baby formula and medicine. They set up what is effectively a makeshift hospital in the parking lot, and they have done such extraordinary work of serving and reaching people up into the hills and the mountains who were unreachable because bridges and roadways have been washed out. Some of the estimates we heard today that there may be as many as 615 roads and major thoroughfares in the state, in western North Carolina, that are severely damaged, and many will need to be rebuilt and replaced. You have bridges out all over the place. You've seen the devastation here in Biltmore Village where we are today. Historic levels of flooding, and up to 20 feet in some places in these buildings, and it'll take a long time to recover. But the people are very resilient, and they remind us of what is best about America, and that's the encouraging thing. I came here, we wanted to be here to let them know that not only do they have extraordinary leadership in Congress, Congressman Chuck Edwards here, and the senators Ted Budd and Tom Tillis. Also, you have Virginia Fox and Richard Hudson and Patrick McHenry. Everyone who has anything to do with Western North Carolina has had all hands on deck, working to serve the needs of their constituents and to be on the ground and deeply involved in what's happening here. But I think it's important for the Speaker of the House to come as well. It's symbolic to show that it's the whole of Congress that has our eyes and our attention, our prayers on the community here and those who are affected. We want them to know they will not be forgotten, and that we will get recovery dollars to these communities as is needed. I want to point out that before we left Congress 2 Wednesdays ago, all of our days run together now, we're on day 13 post-storm here, but the day before Helene made landfall, Congress passed an appropriations, a continuing resolution to fund the government. We included $20 billion to go to FEMA so that they would have what was necessary for the urgent needs that followed the hurricane. We knew that it would be a large one. Of course, we saw it. We had more than a week's notice that would happen. And so we supplied FEMA with the resources that it needed to respond directly. When I last checked, as of Monday, only 1% of those funds had actually been distributed. There's concern that the federal response was a little too slow, and that needs to be addressed. But the FEMA and the administration have the resources necessary right now to address the immediate needs. What happens next after a storm like this is that the states then do their individual assessments and calculations of the damages, and then they submit that need to the federal government, then Congress acts. So as soon as those calculations are prepared, Congress will act in a bipartisan fashion to supply what is needed to help these communities recover the appropriate amount that the federal government should do. But it will take some time, sadly and unfortunately, for those calculations to be made. In the meantime, again, literally billions of dollars are sitting in accounts at FEMA with the administration to address the immediate needs. So we're hopeful that that can be done. I'll just say this, and I want to yield to my colleagues here to say a word here to give the local perspective. But I want to tell you that one of the encouraging things is to see these valiant, heroic first responders, to see volunteers from churches and private organizations. Samaritan's Purse has been on the ground, of course. Mercury One. There's all these outside organizations. We saw the Red Cross here. There's a lot of really good people, a lot of great Americans doing a lot of important work here. We saw people hugging one another and just leaning on one another, and that's what reminds you about what's great about our country. We do this better than anybody. The private sector, neighbors, communities are the best in sticking together at a time like this. And I was heartened to see state police troopers from Louisiana, my home state, who are here, and those friends, they know hurricanes and disaster recovery really well. But there's law enforcement from all around the country. There's over 1,000 troops deployed right now out of Fort Liberty and out of Kentucky that are out here in the mountains and doing what they do, recovery and rescue and removal of debris and anything that's needed. So we've seen the best of America. That's what's encouraging. We will rebuild, and better days are ahead. So I'll yield next to the Congressman for North Carolina's 11th district, which is, he has Asheville here right in the heart of his district, and that's Chuck Edwards. And I don't think he slept maybe a few hours in the last 13 days, but he doesn't look any worse for the wear. So Chuck, go ahead, tell him what's next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank all of you for being here, for your interest. I've got to give a shout out before my remarks to Mayor Esther Manheimer, the mayor of Asheville. This is, and her team. This is a time where we need strong leadership, and we need Asheville to be successful. So thank you for your leadership. This disaster is extremely personal to me. I was born and raised in these mountains. I know what these communities look like before this storm. I know a lot of you are familiar with the storm of 1916. None of us, at least I, didn't live through that, but we've heard talk about it for a couple of generations now. What we see here in Asheville and this metropolitan area is being played out all over North Carolina's 11th district right now. I've spent the last 13 days traveling the district, getting to understand what's taking place, where the problems are, trying to push some buttons to get federal and state agencies to respond. My team's been trying to get resources to various distribution points. We've been working with constituents to get even some of the small wins, such as a lady from Canton came out to see me the other day, and all she needed was something to clean her house with because she didn't have power. There was water in her basement, and there was mold starting to grow in her house. But bigger than that, you can expect me to be on the forefront in Washington, D.C., asking for a supplemental to help the folks here in the mountains of Western North Carolina recover from this storm. I'm really appreciative that my good friends and partners, Senators Ted Budd and Thom Tillis, have been here with me the whole time. They've been boots on the ground. They're going to make great partners in Washington, D.C. But this district, the North Carolina's 11th district, is the one that has been hit the hardest in North Carolina. Let me give you a couple of examples. This storm is, I'm told, covers 9,200 square miles having been affected. 6,000 square miles are right here in NC 11, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I thought that it was so important for me to encourage the Speaker to come. I'm really appreciative that you did that, not only because you're a loving, caring person about people, but as I've been out traveling the district, looking at the devastation, I've taken many photos and then brought those back home and showed them to folks. And those photos were not the pictures that I saw. Photos just cannot depict accurately what took place. And so I thought that it was important when I go to the House floor and start advocating for help for Western North Carolina, that the Speaker had a real firsthand perspective on what it is that we're dealing with here. Past that, I've just got to echo the Speaker's sentiment. I've always known what mountain people are like. I'm one of them. Having been born and raised in Haywood County, carrying a squirrel gun, I know how tough mountain people are. I know how prideful we are. I know the tenacity that we have. And I am ever so proud to see those characteristics coming out in Western North Carolina right now. I've never been more proud to be from these mountains and represent the people here in these mountains. And with that, I'd like to hand the mic over to my very good friend and good partner in Washington, D.C., Senator Thom Tillis. thank you all for being here and casting or directing attention onto a weather event that's going to be with us for years. It will take years for us to get back to anywhere close to where we were 15 days ago. I want to thank the mayor, council members, the chief of police, the first responders, the American Red Cross, Baptist on Mission, Samaritan's Purse, so many volunteers that are flooding from all over the country to be here. Now we've got to go back and give people something to look to, and inspire this community to know that we're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild Canton, we're going to rebuild Asheville, we're going to go out to Boone and every point in between. Chuck mentioned 9,600 square miles. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, that's roughly the size of the state of Massachusetts. So we are dealing with a storm impact that is a 1,000-year storm at a geography of an entire U.S. state. It is going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of work together at every level of government across the aisle to do what we need to do for the people of Western North Carolina. And that's to rebuild and come back stronger. And you can count on my support to be here every step of the way. I'll turn it over to Ted Budd.
Speaker, I want to thank you for being here. We've been friends for a time in the U.S. House. We came in as classmates together. And Speaker, I know you're from Louisiana, and right next door to that, 19 years ago, I was on the ground in Biloxi, Mississippi, right after Hurricane Katrina and the days after that, as a volunteer on roofs, cutting off trees and tarping roofs with Samaritan's Purse tarps. And now, at that point, I had no idea I'd ever serve in elected office, but now it's serving the folks again, but in a different way we serve. I know you were serving your state 19 years ago with Katrina, and we continue to do that. It's a lot different when it's in the mountains. And I just want to begin with a framework of gratitude. With all the many, many needs that you and we see each and every day, I want to thank each and every one of you, elected officials, the mayor, the small towns all around that we visited. And one of the things those in the small towns ask us is, of course, they ask us for help, but they ask us not to forget them. They know there's another hurricane coming. They know that there's lots of distractions in Washington, D.C. and in Raleigh. And they say, please don't forget us, because this isn't something that we fix in a few days or a few weeks or months. This is years. And so you have our commitment that we're going to keep coming back. We're going to remember you. We're from small towns. We know the importance of remembering the needs here, but we thank all the resources. We thank you as the media for covering this, but we ask you don't forget either. Please remember the small towns and come back. Do a follow-on story in a few months and in a year so that you don't forget what's happened here. I also want to thank all the groups, whether it's Samaritan's Purse or Baptist on Mission. Remember, this Asheville area just down the mountain, it's the home of Billy Graham, and it's his ministry which continues. It's Samaritan's Purse that's able to serve. Well, usually they fix problems around the world. Now it's in their own neighborhood. So we thank them, countless groups, the American Red Cross. And to put a number on it, when the American Red Cross came in, they said they think out of a scale of 7, this is probably a 3 or 4 or a 5. But when they got on the ground, they said that this is a 7. It's some of the worst that they've ever seen. So let's keep that in perspective as we continue to do our work and recover. We also want to thank the North Carolina National Guard, the 18th Airborne Corps, which includes the 101st out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and our own Fort Liberty, 82nd Airborne. As they're integrating, and we're seeing them sweep porches, muck out garages and houses and small business and carry out furniture and serve their neighbors, we're grateful for them as well. So thank you all for being here. And Speaker, I'd like to turn it back over to you. And thank you again for coming to our great state. And we say esse quam videre, which is to be rather than to see. So we get to see that as North Carolinians get to serve other North Carolinians. Thank you, Speaker.
Yeah. Let's take a few questions if you have them.
Speaker Johnson, with Fox News. I have 2 questions. First, just to clear it up, is there any money that was for this disaster that was given into illegal migration?
Yeah, so there's a story to be told here, and there'll be a lot of talk about that. I mean, I think it's fair to say that there were mismanaged resources and misplaced priorities. It is true that FEMA is a division of the Department of Homeland Security. It's run by Secretary Mayorkas. As you all know, we impeached Secretary Mayorkas in the House of Representatives over the last year because we did not feel like he was fulfilling his responsibilities and he had committed impeachable offenses. That didn't go anywhere in the Senate. But I do think it's a failure of leadership at the top. There's some valiant, heroic people working on the ground, as there always is in situations like this. But it's the concern about decisions made at the very top. One of the decisions they made was to use an account in FEMA to resettle illegal aliens in our country. It's an outrage. It has outraged the American people, and I want you to know it outrages all the Republican members of Congress, House and Senate. After this election, I believe that we're going to have control of the House and Senate and the White House again. I think Republicans will be in charge. We'll have unified government, and we will restore sanity to those accounts and make sure that doesn't happen. But that was a decision that Mayorkas and Harris and Biden made at a time when the American people need those resources and not illegals over the open border that they created. So there'll be a lot more said about that. Right now, we want to focus on the rescue of the people that still need it and recovery and debris removal and all the rest. Yes, sir.
My question for Mr. Edwards, actually. In terms of, obviously, and I know there's been a lot of misinformation that we've been hearing, especially in North Carolina over the last couple of weeks in general, but I know one thing specifically, I know you've condemned a lot of that, saying misinformation is wrong, the fact that this is happening is a bad thing. But we have heard from former President Trump talking about the fact that he believes $750 is the most people are getting from FEMA at any point. And this is people who lost their homes. So what do you say to that? When you hear that from former President Trump as a Republican as this continues?
I have found that there's a lot of confusion with the way that FEMA works and the benefits that they offer, how we get people back on their feet. What happens is, and I've actually been shoulder to shoulder with FEMA workers while they've been taking applications. Folks that have been displaced walk up to a FEMA station, they make an application. There's no point of verification at that point. We then put them in a system in FEMA, and so that we can get a few bucks in their pocket immediately. If they've got an account number and a routing number, they can get $750 to meet the immediate needs. They can buy a few groceries, put some gas in their car, put some time on their cell phone or whatever's necessary. That's the way this works. And I think that's responsible to the American taxpayer as well. We're reacting to the needs of the people on the ground, but then we go and we make all the other verifications that we need to determine if somebody's eligible or should get something else. In terms of the rumors that are out there, I attribute that to just good old-fashioned storytelling. All of us have been through an exercise where somebody said something to somebody else, and by the time that story got traded over 4 or 5 times, it turned into something different. I have chased every rabbit hole that's been brought to my attention where folks have said that FEMA turned something away or refused to do this or confiscated that, and I found every single one of those to be false. None of them have been corroborated at all.
I just want to follow up on that. Do you condemn what former President Trump was saying about that $750 and that's all that these people are being given?
I am saying what I know, and I've actually worked with the FEMA agents and learned the process myself. This is my first natural disaster, and it's been a very educational process. I think all of us out there need to understand the way that it works. So that's what I've learned.
I'll add that I think if there are comments to be condemned, it may be what Kamala Harris said yesterday on The View. They asked her if there was any decision that President Biden had made that she would do differently, and then of course she boasted that she was the one that helped him make all the big decisions, and she said no, not a single thing. I think that's something to be condemned because, I wonder what the families of the 13 service members who are lost in Afghanistan would say about that answer. I wonder what the families who are having a hard time putting groceries on the table would say about that right now. I wonder what people in the path of the storm of Helene would say about the fact that it took days for them to receive services that they desperately needed. It seems like Kamala Harris would rethink that answer. Maybe she'll correct it. I hope she does. But in the meantime, what we need to do right here, right now, is focus on taking care of the people and not let politics get in the way of it. but make sure they get the resources that they need, and make sure, again, that all of the funding that Congress gave to the administration flows to the people that need it. That's what we need right now. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker Johnson,
I
want to stay on this question of resources right now. You're absolutely right. These businesses need it. The administrator with the U.S. Small Business Administration for this area, also upstate South Carolina, where we are based in Fox, Carolina, saw the devastation that businesses here are facing right now on the ground. She is saying, along with President Biden's administration, that the SBA is specifically going to run out of funds so they can write checks for these small businesses and homeowners applying for loans. What is your message to those small businesses, and do you anticipate maybe bringing Congress back before recess ends?
Well, the way the SBA loan program, this is another source of confusion. The way the SBA loan program works is that it is a lifeline, a vital lifeline for small businesses, which is the heart and soul of the American economy. And Congress, everybody here, all of us, and I think this is bipartisan, we are going to do everything necessary to take care of our small business owners. But the way the loan program works is that is money that comes from the federal government that supplements insurance payouts, okay? So obviously, we're only 13 days past the storm. It takes a while for all these small businesses to work through that process, submit their claims to their insurers, and work through all of that, and then the SBA loan program kicks in. And so the SBA has plenty of money right now to serve the immediate needs, and those that are being submitted already, they'll work on. And when Congress returns to session right after the election, that'll be one of the first agenda items that we have to address. So of course, we'll replenish that fund. We'll have to, because the magnitude of this storm is larger than anyone probably expected. And let's not forget, another one is about to hit Florida as we speak. I mean, it's going to hit tonight. So Congress is going to have a lot on its plate to address, but Congress will, because we're going to provide principled leadership and do what is necessary to take care of America first. When we say America first, that's what we mean. We have to take care of our own household, our own house, metaphorically, before we talk about the rest of the neighborhood.
To
Yes,
confirm
sir.
they're not coming back?
Rich McHugh with News Nation. So some of the leaders we've been out in Swanano, some of the leaders, former military, that are helping deliver aid to the communities, say the number one problem that they're facing is that they need funds released so that the people in this community can get it without the red tape. They are referring to the FEMA, and people aren't being able to communicate with FEMA. Is there anything that you or Congress can do to address that?
We have been trying to address that. I'll give you an example. The question was, if you didn't hear it, people here on the ground are really desperate for this relief. The funds that are available to FEMA that they should be using and dispersing, as I mentioned earlier, they're not doing quickly enough. Again, when I last checked, this is Monday, as of Monday, they had dispersed about 1% of the $20 billion that we gave them 2 weeks ago. So that needs to get out to the people that need it quicker. Whatever needs to happen to do that. I'll give you a quick example. A few nights ago, I saw an online a post on X from Elon Musk. Several friends sent it to me that he was having a hard time getting Starlink distributed to people who needed it so they could get their communications going again. Well, it turned out, I mean, what he was told through his people on the ground here in North Carolina is that FEMA was impeding those persons going into those areas to provide Starlink. And I saw it, several people sent it to me, so I texted Elon and I said, hey, is this true? What's going on? He said, absolutely. So after I texted Elon, I picked up the phone and I called Secretary Mayorkas on his cell. This is in the late evening, a couple of nights ago. All my days run together right now. But he answered the phone and I said, this is what's been reported to me. You have to fix this right now. He said, oh, I'm sure that's not happening, Mr. Speaker. Let me get on it. He did. About 20 minutes later, he responded and said it would be cleared, and Elon got that cleared and it was done. It took hours to cut through the red tape, finally, to get Starlink sent to people. The problem was, as we assessed it later, is that someone at FEMA or someone down the line apparently was instructed that they couldn't allow anyone in unless they had an appointment with someone at the top of the mountain. The whole point was they didn't have any communications. They couldn't have an appointment, right? So you've got to apply common sense and logic. You got to cut through the bureaucracy, and we're demanding, and we're hoping, and we're rolling up our sleeves to try to make sure this happens. So much as Congress has anything to do with it, to get the people the resources and the assistance they need. We're calling on the administration to do it. Whatever it takes, it's the top priority, and we're hoping and demanding that they get that done. Maybe one more question.
The answer that I was asking Mr. Estes, can you respond to is what former President Trump was saying was the
We already addressed that. Another question?
Was it accurate or not?
No, I'm not. I've already talked about that issue. Is there another question?
Speaker, you're kind of contradicting what
No, listen,
Senator
President
Tillis-
Trump is expressing his frustration about the lack of resources being provided here.
Was what he said
That's what
accurate?
we're saying as
Was
well.
what he said accurate?
President Trump is referring to the $750 that Representative Edwards just explained that is an immediate
he said that was
assistance to
total,
people that is
sir.
provided.
Let me tell you what I'm
There's
hearing
more.
from a
Go
local
ahead, Ted.
police chief, all right, excuse me, a first responder.
Yeah.
This is not in a major county like Buncombe County. When they went and applied, first of all, there was a person with a clipboard. The person called an 800 number. They were told to go to a certain grocery store. They show there's a person with a clipboard. That person says, this is a FEMA piece of paper, but I'm not with FEMA and I can't help you. Once they finally figured out where FEMA was, this was 3 days ago, they filled out the paperwork. They said, we think we can give you not $750, but $300. Some of that, ladies' friends, could only get nothing. So it's a real problem. We think it's getting better, but it's too slow. That's why we want to give gratitude to the private sector who was first on the scene, whether it's nonprofits, American Red Cross, the Samaritan's Purse, or North Carolina Neighbors helping North Carolina neighbors. Then government, which often is slow, is now coming online and it's being more helpful. We're grateful for these FEMA workers that are on the ground, but I'll tell you what, the bureaucracy at the top has slowed things down from the very beginning. I like where it's headed, but the decision from the Kamala Harris and the Biden White House has been very slow.
But is that amount accurate? That's all I'm asking.
The one that I just told you was accurate,
No,
and that was $300.
$750 total accurate. Is that number from former President Trump about that is all that is given to homeowners?
For
who have
some,
been
I'm
totally
sure it will be
displaced?
true.
Totally.
Look, guys, we have just talked about an area the size of Massachusetts that's under threat. I talked to a farmer yesterday. After 70 years, he's shutting down business. We've got people hurting here, and that's your focus. I'd like to hear from people who are going to talk about how we recover, how we get the resources where they need to be. You can work on that story. We need to work on rebuilding North Carolina, and I would appreciate questions that are focused on that subject.
Yeah. And when you write that story, go ahead and mention that President Trump has been here, has donated his own personal resources and offered help to the people here more than Biden and Harris did. Biden was on the beach, I think, and Harris, last I checked, she was having a beer with Stephen Colbert last night. So that's where their priorities are. One last question on real topics here. Thank y'all again for being here. These gentlemen here and our colleagues in the House and Senate, I mean, these members of Congress have been working overtime. They will continue. They're here to serve the constituents. We're really proud of that, and we're grateful. And I just want to say the parting thought here is that Congress is not going to forget the people of this area. We know Western North Carolina has been struck hard. I've seen it myself. I and these gentlemen will take this message back to our colleagues, and we will ensure that people get the resources and the help they need. Thank you all so much for being here.